Hello and welcome everyone, it is me, the Laval, also known as the Duelist, back for you with another deck profile. And to continue our series of kind of silly stuff I came up in the last couple of weeks, we are taking a look at Heatsoul Morphtronics. Not a whole lot of changes here, because if you're looking at this list, you're probably going, but this is just Equip Morphtronics with a Heatsoul in the actual deck. And you would be probably very correct, but let's, still talk a bit about it and see what interesting inclusions I put into this list, and maybe a bit of the theory you can put into a list that includes Heatsoul yourself. Starting off with fairly standard Erasure Spawn. Now we are starting off with 3 copies of Morphtronic Cellphone. While in attack position, this allows you to once per turn roll a 6-sided die, reveal cards on top of your deck equal to the die roll, and then you're able to special summon a level 4 or lower Morphtronic monster from those, ignoring summoning conditions. Pretty crazy card. I've explained and told you guys that this is a very good card in this deck for a good bit now, and also quite often. So, let's move on to the next piece of, I guess, the font trio that keeps Morphtronics going. Morphtronic Smartphone, a level 1 tuner that you can special summon from your hand by banishing a Morphtronic monster from your graveyard. Similar effect to Cellphone, roll a die, reveal cards from your deck equal to the die roll, but this guy adds an excavated Morphtronic card to your hand, being able to not only get you some monsters into your grip, but also grab extenders like Repair Unit and Converter. Then we look at the loopy boy himself, Morphtronic Telephone. Attack position effect, I think, is infamous by now. You are able to once per turn during the main phase roll a 6-sided die, gain life points equal to the result times 100, and then you are able to special summon a Morphtronic monster from your graveyard with a level equal to or lower than the result. Meaning, if you have 1 on field, 1 in grave, you are off to, some fairly loop heavy combos, brother. Then we move into 3 copies of Morphtronic Remoten, another great piece of consistency for the deck. Once per turn, while in attack position, this allows you to target a Morphtronic monster in your graveyard. You banish the target and then add a Morphtronic with the same level as the target from deck to hand. And in defense, you can send a Morphtronic monster from your hand to the graveyard and add 1 other Morphtronic monster with the same level as that monster from graveyard to hand. Pretty nice array of effects, allows you to, cycle through all those level 1s that you're playing. Potentially, cycling through smartphones for continuous advantage, or just grabbing like pieces you will need in your combos. Playing a copy of Boomboxen to round out like a monster lineup. I think 12 names is a bit critical mass. 13 is just okay. Usually you want to be playing more, but I think 13 is perfectly fine. Boomboxen is my number 13 here for like almost no particular reason whatsoever. This could be Stapin, this could be Slingin, this could be Scopin, whatever you really want it to be. 3 copies of Gadget Gamer follow that. Next, when this guy is normal summoned, you add a level 1 machine from your deck to your hand, and you contribute this guy to special summon a Morphtronic monster from your hand, and then special summon a Gadget Hauler from your hand or deck. We're playing the Gadget Hauler for this, mainly because Gadget Gamer adds you like a telephone and then already enables a copy of Power Tool Dragon, which already gets you to Repair Unit, which is pretty crazy because this deck was dying for guaranteed combo lines. Added monster we are playing, we are maining 3 Ash and a Nibiru. These are mainly here for a card we can talk about right now, the Cross Out Designator. Since we are looking to, maybe consistently make Heatsoul, we might want to include some good draws of the Heatsoul, and I think Ash Blossom and Nibiru lend themselves very well to that, similar to Infinite Impermanence. And since we want to keep those live, I am not on Caught by the Grave, so you're not, caught buying an Ash and then you draw into an Ash of your Heatsoul and the Ash is dead. So we are opting to play Crossout instead, with, a suite of a target in Nibiru to, nip-proof our lines a bit. And also Infinite Impermanence. Then, for like the regular spell lineup, a 1-for-1 to grab us Cellphone or Telephone from the deck, a Monster Reborn. I think you could cut this realistically for the 3rd Crossout, but I really like Reborn in decks that run Braver Dragon, since top decking Reborn and then just getting the Braver Dragon back is pretty darn nice. 3 copies of Machine Duplication, just a crazy bit of extension if you draw Cellphone or, Telephone, or really any of your targets, be it Remoten, Gamer, or, the first 2 mentioned. Then we have 2 copies of Junkbox, an archetypal monster Reborn that revives a level 4 low Morphtronic and destroys it during the end phase. And then we have 2 copies of another archetypal extender in Morphtronic Converter. This targets a machine monster you control and applies one of the following effects depending on that target's battle position. If the target was an attack, you special summon a Morphtronic monster from your deck with a different name from your target, and then place your target on top of your deck. If the target was in defense, you change that target to attack, and if you do, you special summon a level 4 or lower machine from your hand. Talked about the crossout in terms of equip spells. For our Braver Dragon, we are on Metal, Silver, Armor, Raptiness for the targeting lock, and a Life Extreme for some, you know, I guess battle protection. So your opponent has to have a monster with a 4100 attack at least to get over the Braver Dragon. And also for the added pop effect, which is pretty nice. So yeah, that's cool. Then we have 3 Reaper Unit, kind of an archetypal premature burial. You are able to activate this by sending a Morphtronic monster from your hand to the graveyard and then selecting a Morphtronic monster in your graveyard, special summoning the target, and then equipping it with this card. Cutting, you know, closing off the main deck here are 2 copies of Infinite Impermanence. You could probably also like main a 3rd Impermanence. Nibiru's mainly just here to, you know, have a way to Nibiru-proof us, because otherwise the deck really gets Nibiru'd rather easily on like, you know, halfway through the gamer combo, I guess. In the extra, we have a Power 2 Dragon to fetch us those powerful, you know, equip extenders. We have a copy of Power 2 Braver Dragon as one of our end board pieces. This guy equips these 3 equips here, the Metal, Silver, Armor, the Life Extreme, and Raptiness on summon, and can quick effect send an equip spell equipped to him to the graveyard, and then target an effect monster on the field and either change the target's battle position or negate the target's effects until the end of the turn. We are playing an Heatsoul Morphtronics Dragon to make our way into Braver Dragon much easier, and already turning Gadget Gamer into a kind of 2-card Braver with, you know, the setup that Power 2 Dragon gives us, since we just need to pitch a Morphtronic for the Reaper unit to make Heatsoul Morphtronics. And then we can Heatsoul Morphtronics back the Telephone, since Heatsoul Morphtronics revives a level 2 or lower monster on Synchro Summon to get that back. And Naturia Beast for, you know, those, for spell negation, you know, it just negates every spell, I guess. 1 copy of Earphone. This is here to more easily go into Naturia Beast and to have a recurable equip spell for our Power 2 Braver Dragon, as this is able to equip itself to a face-up Synchro monster on the field, while it is on the field or in the graveyard. For our Link lineup, we're playing the Anti-Cheese White Woman, Underworld Goddess of the Closed World, a staple of the Morphtronic rank grind by now. Just an incredible tool going second. I feel like this deck has a very easy time making her, and then just kind of, just yoinking away an endboard piece your opponent controls into a 3k towers, which is pretty nice. Playing an Decode Talker to more easily go for game, and Apollosa as an endboard piece. And then I guess the man of the hour, Decode Talker Heatsoul. Takes 2 or more Cybers monsters with different attributes. Gains 500 for each monster he points to, and you can quick effect pay 1000 life points, draw a card, and then if your life points are 2000 or less, you can banish him and special summon a Link 3 or lower Cybers from your extra deck, except Decode Talker Heatsoul. This is a really cool card. I really like Heatsoul, and I would love to play like a deck that regularly makes Heatsoul, because I think Heatsoul provides a very interesting way of potentially extension, but also interaction with, you know, the powerful hand traps that we have gotten in the last like half decade. Stuff like Ash Blossom, Nibiru, Imperm, or like even, you know, older stuff like a Veiler, for example. Which is nice, and I think, you know, the value you gain off of Heatsoul is pretty sick. The life point cost in this deck rarely matters, which you will probably see in one of the combos I'll show later. We have a Nightmare Unicorn here for some added removal, and a G-Golem Stubborn Menhir. This takes 2 Earth monsters, and if it is special summoned from the graveyard, you can target an Earth monster in your graveyard that can be normal summoned or set and special summon it, but negate its effects. Or, you know, you could also add it to your hand, but that'll probably rarely come up. In general, the effect will rarely come up. This is mostly here because it is probably the easiest Link 2 Cybers to make in the deck to go into Heatsoul. Otherwise, for added, you know, Link 2 Cybers, we are playing a copy of Security Dragon, which I really liked in playtesting. This just takes 2 monsters, and once while it's face up on the field, if it's co-linked, you can target a monster your opponent controls and return it to the hand, which is very cool removal. Especially since Link Kuriboh already gives you a very good arrow for this, and you're easily able to make Linkuriboh. So this is pretty good going second. Playing an IP Masquerader here, because it's a good link too. A Linkuriboh to get those level 1s off the board, and an Armorage for very niche hands where we have to normal summon a Remoten and link that off. If you're playing Armorage and need like an additional decision for like this slot here, you could also play Videon, since Videon is also something you can link off for the Armorage in niche cases, but I like Boomboxen for the Earth attribute to potentially go into Net Beast with. For the side deck, this is mainly pretty standard. I feel like a couple of things I want to talk about here specifically. You can definitely side like additional crossout targets. Veiler, if you know, might suspect that your opponents are playing that. Because in general, the side deck is very format dependent on where you find yourself in. So like siding additional crossout targets, I feel like isn't too crazy, especially if you have like 1 or 2 slots left in the side deck. I don't see a problem with that. But with, you know, all that out of the way, I think we'll get into some combo lines and maybe look at what you can do with this deck. The first hand we will be taking a look at here does not look rather impressive. And I do have to say I get a good bit lucky here. Since I do summon the Southbound, I do hit a Smartphone, which is pretty tempting, but I also hit a Southbound. So we're going to fire that, and oh, would you look at that, it is another copy of Southbound. In general, this definitely, you know, is very lucky, but I think you can definitely see that it is rather easy, even on a hand with like close to no extension, to just climb into a Link 3, which I think this deck is very good at, you know, assembling just like a couple bodies. It sadly mostly has nothing to make with those, but I feel like Heatsoul falls into this very niche, good niche where you can easily make it. And, you know, maybe you live on an Ash Blossom, and Telephone is, I guess, pretty decent to, you know, get yourself through like a follow-up turn. But this is kind of, I guess, the diet version of what you could be doing with this. Just to kind of, you know, showcase. I think even on a bricky hand, you can at least make Heatsoul. And this is where we really start cooking. Or rather, you know, we turn up the heat, since we are normally summoning a copy of Gadget Gamer, grabbing us that second copy of Telephone. You could also opt for Saffron here, but since we are playing a very Link-heavy deck, I opt for the Telephone here. I make the Power to a Dragon here, grab a copy of Repair Unit, and then use the Telephone here to grab back the Telephone on Grave. As you know, probably could tell there, having access to Reaper Unit would also enable access Synchro Starters. I do go for the Telephone in defense here, find a Saffron, which is exactly what I wanted. Making a Linkuriboh here, using the Telephone to grab back a Telephone, using the spent Telephone and the extra Synchro Starters Dragon to make Braver. Since I can rather freely extend here, since I do have this crossout designator here, so I'm not at risk of getting, you know, Nibiru at summon number 5, which is very nice. I do indeed take that. We do get a couple more reveals in here, make the Stubborn Man here go for the Heatsoul. And then I try to, you know, smartphone dig for something, but I don't really find anything. We go for the Saffron here, a fair bit greedy, and I find the Remoten, which I think makes this decision a whole lot easier of what I want to do next. Since I go Remoten, banish Saffron, add a Smartphone, make an Earphone, make a Net Beast. And this is, I feel like, already a point where you could definitely decide to stop, which I think is the interesting part about a deck, about a build using Heatsoul. We are looking at Heatsoul on board, Braver Dragon with the targeting lock for the entire board, and a Naturia Beast. Very few board breakers will kill you through a setup like this. The idea basically is, you know, we're maybe playing with a bit, we are maybe not, you know, throwing our entire hand onto the board, but kind of using Heatsoul as a way to, you know, secure follow-up plays. I do decide to go in here, which you can of course do. You know, normally summon the special summon the Smartphone here, dig just for a name, because any Morphtronic name at this point probably does a lot. Since we do have a couple Telephones in the graveyard, I do grab the first one grabs the second one, I do link off the first one, the second one grabs back a Smartphone here, since I am kind of strapped for space. I do try to dig for more follow-up here, I don't find it, which is pretty sad. But I do commit 3 monsters into an indestructible Appelosa to round off this end board, setting the crossout designator, just, you know, because I, in this example, didn't have to use it. But, you know, Crossout Designator can come in clutch more often than you think. So I guess that is the main theory behind this. You have the option to either, you know, play a bit more, you know, resource-oriented and conserve your resources for a potential follow-up turn, because Heatsoul, I think, is a very sick card that can, you know, carry a lot of games on its own, especially if you find 1 or 2 hand traps. But you can also, you know, of course, say, send it and go balls to the wall, combo, just like the deck has always done. But I think I'll see you guys in the deck profile again with a couple more closing thoughts. And with that, we are back with the deck. In general, I really like this. I think you have a lot of flexibility in the extra deck due to the high amount of links, since a lot of the link cards you are playing in here are very good at not only playing into boards, but also assembling a pretty impressive board. Making, you know, Telephone a bit more, I guess, attractive as a play enabler than in, you know, a build that runs a lot more synchros. The synchro package in this is rather limited. We are essentially playing the bare minimum to make, like, Braver Dragon and a Chariot Beast, which are probably the deck's best, like, native end board pieces. I know Naturia Beast isn't native to the deck, but Morphtronics is one of the few decks that actually ends up making Naturia Beast. I think having the ability to run Crossout is pretty sick. The deck didn't feel too bricky. Like, you can definitely do a couple test hands with this and then, like, decide to play, like, maybe a Morphtronic name more. But from experience, I can tell you 13 names is, like, about fine. I think 12 tends to be a bit more critical mass, especially now that we don't have Hulk. But 13 is pretty damn good. So with, you know, all that off the way, I would like your thoughts on this. This definitely is a fairly, you know, boring list. I think there's not a lot of spice here, but I think Heatsoul definitely still has a lot of interesting theory behind it, and also is just an incredibly cool card that you can, of course, make in this deck, because this deck can probably make any extra deck piece if you just put your mind to it. But with that out of the way, I will thank you guys very much for watching and see you guys again next time. But until then, goodbye.